Hey, we're doing another Retail Revelation episode this week, where I talk about the many horror stories I have from my time in retail. You see, I used to work at Rite Aid, and since they're bankrupt and closed now, I'm sure I can talk about the situations I found myself in while working there. Today's theme is going to be about drugs and the various users I've had interactions with. I'll link episode 1 in the corner here if y'all want to check that out. Just keep in mind, I've certainly gotten better at this whole YouTube thing since that episode dropped. And obvious PSA here, don't do drugs. You'll see in this video the potential dangers of doing such. It's never a good idea because you never know how your body could react or what could happen. That being said, I'll probably have to censor the theme in the title or something. We'll see. Since we're doing a theme this time, I also have a few more stories in this video compared to the last one. So we'll see how this format works, and let me know in the comments about any future themes you want to hear or any feedback at all. I've got alcohol-involved stories, stories involving weapons and getting robbed, thieves, assholes, stories of the dreaded Western Union machine, you name it. So let's get into my customer crackhead stories today, shall we? So I was called into work earlier than normal this day. I used to work 3:30 to 11:30, which was close, but this time I was called in from like 1 to 9 or something like that. It was weird. Now, there's a fast food place that was nearby, close enough to where I could, zip over there, and I was early enough, so I was like, okay, let's pick up some lunch on the way, get that ready to go before having to clock into work. And as I round the corner that the Rite Aid I worked at was on, there was a lady who crashed her car at that intersection. Now, it was a bad intersection. There were accidents there regularly. Doesn't surprise me. What surprised me, apparently she had been loitering around the store for the majority of the day. So I come back with my food, and my coworkers are informing me of what's going on. This lady that crashed her car outside had plugged in her phone at the photo booth to charge it, but left it unattended for some reason, and then went into the bathroom earlier in the day, locked herself in the bathroom, and they had to call the police to have her removed. So when I get there, her phone is still plugged in, and then she goes into the bathroom a second time and locks herself in the bathroom again. So we have to call the police a second time in the day now, and they get her out of the bathroom and they escort her outside, and they're doing the whole let's test to see what's going on bit, And apparently she could not stand up straight, let alone walk in a straight line. Something tells me she was clearly on something here. I feel like alcohol wouldn't be the only thing that would result in this whole madness that she put us throughout the day. So there's got to be something involved there. I don't know. But the cops are basically just done with her shit and give her the ultimatum, hey, you can go to jail or the hospital. And she chooses the hospital, apparently, so they cart her off. And so the rest of the workday goes as normal, and I get off around 9 o'clock, a little earlier than normal. And you'd think that that was the highlight of that day. But no, because after I left, apparently, this other lady came in, approached this random guy in the aisle who was late teens, early 20s, and she's like, hey, you want to do drugs in the bathroom? And he's like, okay. So these two people that do not know each other go into the bathroom, and this guy does drugs that he does not know what he ends up taking, and ends up ODing in one of the aisles. From what I've heard, the front-end manager, the pharmacist, they're all hopping into action, have to perform CPR, calling the police a third time that day, and ambulances and all that, and it was a huge thing. Wild stuff. And speaking of people ODing, there was another lady that OD'd. She was on something. I don't know what it was, but apparently she took something and then went back to the pharmacy to get her prescriptions and was sitting down waiting for the prescriptions to be ready and just was unresponsive after a little bit. Just fell asleep or something. At one point, one of the pharmacy techs are just looking at her and leaned in and being like, ma'am, trying to wake her up, and just nothing. Again, had to call the police for that instance too. She woke up after a bit with the police involvement there, so it was just one of those things. As per policy, we were not supposed to touch the customers, stuff like that, so there's only so much we could do. Another time I was on the clock, I get a call in the middle of a rush. It was middle of the day on probably a Saturday or something, and I get a call. The store phone rings, so I pick it up. I do the usual intro, and this lady is like, Hey, I live on the side street behind your building, and there's a guy in the bushes outside doing drugs, and you need to do something about it. And so, I've got a line of people. I'm like, hey, I'm going to pass this off to the manager. And so I do. Apparently, she tells the manager the same thing. So the manager tells her, hey, he's not upsetting any customers. No one's complaining in here. As per our policy, we can't really do anything about that. And, he concludes the phone call and hangs it up. And, half an hour later, the lady calls back and she's like, he's still outside doing drugs. And if you're not going to do something, I'm going to. And the manager's like, okay, then do something. Because, again, as per the policy, we can't really do anything about it. Nothing really came of that. No emergency personnel showed up to talk to us, anything like that. Nothing. So at the end of the day, as I'm leaving, I round the back of the building, just out of curiosity. The bush wasn't even on our property. The bush was not on our property. So even if he was upsetting customers, couldn't do anything about it. I get that this lady did not know that. It's just a funny thing. Oh yeah, of course, So this tweaker came in one day. He was just off his rocker. He was on something strong. He was repeating the same phrases over and over. He was pacing up and down the aisles. He was all jittery and jumpy. You could tell he was on something. I don't know what it was, but it was something. This was 9 o'clock at night, pitch black outside. Luckily, we didn't have any customers. It was middle of the week or something like that. So, barely anyone else in the store. This guy is just going back and forth, going through the motions, right? Again, repeating the same things over and over and over. And then the door opens. Someone else is about to come in. And this guy freaks out and runs behind the registers to hide. Now, first of all, this is obviously a problem because, a non-associate being in an associate-only area, especially where there's money, big problem there, right? On top of that, despite us having a decent amount of people on the staff, the store manager and the assistant store manager would only schedule 2 people to close. We were in a bad area that was known for getting robbed, and they would only have 2 people closing 6 out of the 7 days a week. That being usually myself as the sole cashier and whatever manager they have on duty. Although they didn't use the term manager, it was shift supervisor. And I am not the strongest person right now. And this happened 5 years ago. So I was even smaller and scrawnier back then than I am now. And on top of that, the manager they have scheduled, she's smaller than me. So, you would think, logically, that you would plan things out a bit differently with closing shifts. Again, I was never on that situation. I was never a part of that part of the business with scheduling schedules, so it's probably more complicated than what I'm picturing here, I don't know. Let me know in the comments, Feel free to correct me on anything or, let me know your experiences as well. Anyway, this tweaker runs behind the counter. Luckily, we get him out pretty easily. It's as simple as telling him, hey, you can't be back here. And luckily he listened, but yeah, that was a gamble. You never know how he's going to respond to that, So yeah, there's that. Another time we had to call the police, and, they took care of him when they got there, so there's that. There was a lady I'm pretty sure was doing meth. I think it's meth. Whichever one results in, the marks and sores on your face from doing it, I'm not sure. And she always came in with, this dirty complexion, for lack of a better word. Anyway, she would always come in to do Western Union, which the Western Union machine usually didn't work. It was a gamble if it worked. But for those that don't know, Western Union is a money-sending service. So at Rite Aid, you're supposed to pick up the phone at the kiosk, and pretty much you would either talk to a real person or a recording. The phone usually didn't work, but we had a number that they could call on their phones. They would give all the information to the representative. The representative would give them an 8-digit code, and then they could take the 8-digit code up to me at the register and then complete the transaction up there. So if they were sending money, I would type it in, we'd go through the process, and I would, verify all the bills are real and all that, And then I'd give them a separate code to give to the receiver. Or if they were receiving, they would provide the 8-digit code. And if I had the money in the register at the time, I could complete the sale and, get them their money. Now, this lady never had an issue. She would always come in at a decent time during the day, early night, at a time where we definitely would have the money in the machine, and she was never, receiving a large amount or anything. But the weird thing is that she would always say that she loved me near the end of the transaction. And it was, only me. It was weird. She would come in, once, maybe twice a month, and one of the managers on duty, he would call her my Rite Aid girlfriend, which was uncomfortable considering I was in a relationship at the time. Weird. Anyway, this one time she comes in with a guy. Anytime before, she would always come in by herself. She came in with a guy this time. And, we're going through the usual motions. And this guy is just staring daggers at me the entire time. And then she says that she loves me again. And I'm like, oh God, is this guy going to jump the counter? So in my divine wisdom, I end up saying the first thing that comes to mind to alleviate the situation, which is, you only love me because I give you money. And then I complete the sale. Which, looking back now, probably didn't help things. And I never saw her again. And frankly, she was always nice. Clearly just someone down on their luck. And I hope she got clean. I hope she's still out there. I don't know. Who knows? And for the final story today, a guy came in on the hardest of hard substances. One of the worst drugs you could take. That bad dollar store weed. So he comes in, absolutely reeking of weed, which we've had the normal amount of people coming in throughout the day, absolutely stinking the place up. I guess when you're high, you don't realize you smell like weed. I don't know. I've never done drugs. I don't know. But this guy sticks out to me because he walked over to the perfume and cologne cabinet, which we kept locked. And he asked if he could look at the samples, which, not going to tell a customer no, obviously. So I go over, I unlock the container, and he asks if he can, look at and smell one of the colognes, one of the free samples that we have in there, for people to do just that. So I'm like, yeah, go for it. And he picks it up, and he looks at it, and he just douses himself in it, then puts it back on the shelf and goes, all right, thank you, and just leaves. And you would think that'd be the end of it. But come to find out that dollar store weed and Nautica Blue cologne mixed to make an unholy amalgamation of scent. This combination just lingered in the store for a good half an hour at least, and it was one of the worst things I have ever smelled. I can't even describe it, just that it was horrid. But that is all the crackhead stories I've got for you today. Like I said, feel free to let me know in the comments what else you want to hear, different topics. I'll see if I can pull from my my list. And yeah, thanks for watching.